Okay, here goes. You know what that is? It's the sound of a helicopter, according to Aaron Rollins. Aaron Rollins? Rawlings? We're going to talk about that today on the Man Space. Welcome to the Man Space podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter.
I thought it was a lawnmower.
I thought it was Chewbacca.
Welcome, spacemen. That was a lawnmower earlier. Not Chewbacca, although it's the same thing you do for Chewbacca. Huh? But I say it because you remember Aaron Ralston, that's his name. Remember the guy who cut his arm off?
Oh,
the
got stuck?
127 hours guy?
Yeah. I think maybe maybe I've told you this story. He came and spoke when I was at Auburn, just as like the student body hired this guy to come and speak, and he told this story. And he told us, he's like, this is only like my third speaking engagement, and they're trying to teach me to like do some more things to make it feel like a lived experience for the audience members. And so at the end, he like put his arm, he made this noise like, and I turned to Becky and I was like, Chewbacca? And she's like, shh, Rob. He was trying to make a helicopter noise. That's why I did that. It's a helicopter noise. I'm surprised you guys couldn't tell. Let's see your helicopter noise. Do it. Which goes like this. Oh. Matt's helicopter's like kept afloat by someone pedaling. Hey, listen, I'm going to go back to this thing that we've talked about before we get into this episode today. I had a recent interaction with a youngster, like early 20s, about this TikTok Roman Empire thing. Did we talk about this on it? We've talked about it before.
Like a dude is always thinking about or thinks about the Roman Empire at least once a day.
Yeah.
Which just so you know,
dude thinks about the Roman Empire?
Yeah.
I have not thought about the Roman Empire once since you shared that tidbit with me until right now.
I haven't thought about it daily, but
oh no,
I have something to say about it.
All right.
But am I going to prove your TikTok thing wrong?
No, I already think it's false. The TikTok thing is just a trend, and I have an explanation for it. But go ahead.
Oh.
Tell me how you think about the Roman Empire.
Well, not often, but I heard something recently that, you always talk about the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Some guy was explaining, like, it didn't fall. It just turned into a religion. I was like, oh. It kind of just
interesting.
Switched into Christianity and like the Vatican and Catholicism and everything, and
they're still going.
So it's still alive, I guess.
But see, that's different. You didn't think about it. It was like there. Mm-hmm. These TikToks are like, this is what cracks me up is everyone, like I've talked to people, Mike, we talked about this because your daughter was asking. And I was like, no, it's just a dumb TikTok thing. Because the TikToks are like, it'd be like a girlfriend asking her boyfriend, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? I'd be like, I don't know, at least once a day. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm sure that was a very natural, authentic question that just came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a 20-year-old recently that was like, I mean, not once a day, like probably a couple times a week. And I was like, no, you do not. Because there's a whole thing too about like, he's like, I mean, these aqueducts they made, it's incredible. It's like, you're telling me twice a week you're thinking about Roman aqueducts? Like, no freaking way.
I just
go ahead.
Picked up on what you were saying. I just got a picture of like ducks. Water ducks. Aqueducts.
Aren't all ducks aqueducts?
No. I think there are some that are wood ducks. But maybe they still swim.
Well, I've thought about it when it comes to like Little Caesars, because then I'll think about on Home Alone, they had pizza delivered from Little Nero. And then I jump over to the Bad Religion song where he says, like Rome after Nero, my future's one big zero.
Wow,
that's about the closest I
rhyme. Get. I don't know where that came.
He's that guy, the lead singer of Bad Religion, man. He's like a philosophy professor. He's a fascinating, very intelligent dude, and his lyrics are very
they've been around
metaphorical.
Since like the early 80s, right?
The band, Bad Religion?
Yeah.
Late 70s.
Yeah. I had no idea they were that old.
Yeah. Yeah, they were
they're
like,
still
they're
playing?
kind of like they still, I don't know. The last album came out probably like 5 years ago, but.
That's like U2 old.
That's nuts.
That's like U2 old, and that's old. It's not Rolling Stones old yet, who also just put out no.
a new
Rolling Stones put out a
album.
new song or new album.
Yeah, I think it was an album.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Here's what I think this is concerning is because I think one of the things it does is because this all men do this. Now it's like if you ask somebody, they have to say yes, or are you really a man? How are you not thinking about the Roman Empire? And suddenly now we have another stupid measuring stick that we're supposed to meet to be like, I guess I better start studying about the Roman Empire. It's freaking dumb.
I guess we all unmanned ourselves just
Yeah,
now.
big time. Someone's like,
I was
Rob's
going
not
to say,
even
does
a
it
man.
count if I was reading something about the Gladiator sequel that they're making?
Does it count that last night Becky was telling me this is she said she recently watched Gladiator while she's running on the treadmill, and she's like, Russell Crowe's acting is good, very good. She's like, it's a terrible movie. Like they use slow-mo in these weird spots, and like she talks about Joaquin Phoenix, he does this terrible accent. She's like, the whole thing is bad. Like there's some bad writing, and I was like, maybe this is like Top Gun. We all loved it, and I watched it again. I'm like, oh, this is a bad movie.
Yeah, Top Gun's terrible.
So now I have to watch Gladiator again to see if it still holds up. It
I'm trying to
must,
remember the
right?
Last time I saw it not super recently, but I had the same thought because first
Really?
time I saw it was like high school, right?
Yeah.
And it was like,
Well,
I mean, at the time, I guess compared to other movies, it was really good, but now
Right.
it's like, okay,
man, I don't know what to do with that
with what?
because Ridley Scott has another movie coming out like in the next month or two, Napoleon, with Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon, or maybe it's
Yeah.
Bonaparte. I don't know what it's called, but I feel like, is it going to be good or is it? And also, did you know Ridley Scott is like 90, but he's got like 12 movies he's signed up to direct.
Wow.
He's going to like die on set.
I don't think he's that old, is he?
You'd
He's
have
born
to be
in
that old to be
1937.
named Ridley.
Yeah. Whatever 37 is. He's 86 probably.
I was going to say he's shy at 90 still.
Sure. 86. Still. You're directing 12 movies?
I saw the preview for that. I had a horrible movie experience on Saturday. The movie was good. We saw A Haunting in Venice.
Oh yeah.
And so we got there probably like 20 minutes before, I guess, like before preview started. There's like probably a range, like 6 kids, maybe like 6th grade to, I don't know, maybe 9th grade. Oh my
Right.
gosh, dude. Like just super freaking loud, like jumping all over the place. And I'm like, okay, whatever. The previews haven't started. Maybe they'll settle down. No, they did not. Like, so somebody went and got an usher, like during the previews. The usher came in, security guard came in, and they like stayed quiet for exactly 2 seconds. And then like ramped back up, like turning their freaking flashlight on their phone on, like shining it through the seats, throwing popcorn, like walking up and down the stairs multiple times, and like talking full volume. So if like 5 minutes into the movie, I went and got the security guard again. He comes up. He's just like, told him to be quiet again. And I told him, I'm like, I think you just need to kick him out, dude. But so I probably waited another, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. And then I'm like, I was about to pull like an opposite George.
Yeah.
Like, quit kicking the back of the seats. But we just moved down. And then finally somebody in their row went and got the security guard again and booted him out. I'm like, geez, dude, like, I don't even want to, like, it happened to me during the Barbie movie too. This guy, like, his phone goes off and he answers like, "What's up?" I'm like, he's like full volume talking for probably 5 minutes. I'm like, it's not worth it to pay to go see a movie anymore, man.
Matt, you were like 2 seconds away from being a male Karen.
Yeah, and I
You
wouldn't
probably
have
been
cared.
on somebody's TikTok.
Yeah,
Did you get free tickets?
no, I didn't ask for them, but
That's what I would have done. I'd have
what
been like,
Karen
they
would
ruined
do.
my movie experience. You need to give me free tickets.
yeah,
I feel like they should.
Movie theaters don't care because they're like, whatever.
You're going to pay more for popcorn anyway.
You'll come and buy popcorn anyway.
Well, now on to the topic du jour. Excuse me, what's the soup du jour? It's the soup of the day.
that sounds good.
I'll have that. It's the soup of the day. I think I've referenced this before. I have a friend. I was watching him and his kids. They're all probably under like maybe 8 or 9. It's got like 4 kids, and they're climbing all over this thing that like it's a chair holder thing. As they, they're climbing in and out of these bars and hanging on the top ones. And I was like, dude, are you like, are you, he wasn't even really, he was kind of noticing him and one, like just kind of watching him. I was like, are you worried at all? He's like, nah. It's like, if they fall off, I'll make them get up again and go do it again. I was like, oh, good for you. And that's kind of like, is your wife cool with this? Because I don't think my wife would be. Maybe she would be. But I thought, I wondered in my head, how much have I helicopter parented? And probably more than I like. There are times when I can catch myself telling my kids, even just small things like, hey, be careful, when I don't need to. Like, and then thinking in my head, what does that do to my kid if I'm saying be careful? In a time when maybe it's not super necessary, are they thinking, oh, okay, I always have to be careful. Like everything out there can hurt me if I'm not careful, so I got to be careful. Now, maybe it's not really the same thing as helicopter parenting, but it's elements that I've wondered, how much do I do that myself? Because I think probably a lot of people, if we asked them who listen to the show, if we said, do you helicopter parent? I think their answer would be no. But maybe if we dig around and say, well, do you? Like, do you do this or this or this? That they might say yes. Okay, so this article that was sent to me, it's from the Journal of Pediatrics. Decline in independent activity as a cause of decline in children's mental well-being. A summary of the evidence. That sounds intense. So for our listeners, I will say I brought this topic, and Mike's response was classic. Because I said, there's basically this article saying that helicopter parenting is like correlated with, although that says cause, correlated with basically an increase in anxiety in children. And Mike essentially said, no duh.
It totally reminded me of, you remember that Nickelodeon show, Pete and Pete?
Yeah.
There was a character on there that would always say stuff that like was kind of random. And people were like, really? He's like, well, you guys didn't know that?
It's funny. I like to do a lot of like, surprised you didn't know that. There's something really obvious. So anyway, let's talk first. Now, maybe it is really for people. Matt, you clarified that this article was not necessarily saying that, hey, spoiler alert, helicopter parenting is correlated with increased anxiety or a decline in mental well-being of children. It was actually kind of stating that this is actually the lack of independent play and independent functioning is actually like a main factor, and that this has been going on for decades, essentially. This increase in, I think it's actually, I don't think it's been an on-off switch, right? I think it's probably been an increasing like this. And as it does that, then the children's well-being goes down. Mm-hmm. I think it's been steadily increasing to a point where now for a lot of people, I think that's what I'm saying is maybe there's what I do now compared to quote unquote helicopter parents would not look like helicopter parenting, but maybe compared to like 20 years ago or 50 years ago would look a lot like helicopter parenting. It's funny to me too, that when I say 20 years ago in my head, somehow I went back to the 80s, but 20 years ago is 2003.
2003.
It's a real shame.
So here's my question though. How are we, because I feel like if we're going to sit and talk about this, we need to define what we mean by helicopter parenting.
I got WebMD right here.
Oh, perfect. And I have another term that will go along with it.
So these are 7 signs that you might be a helicopter parent. You fight your child's battles. You do their schoolwork. You coach their coaches. You keep your kids on a short leash. You're a maid in your own house.
Oh.
You play it too safe, and you can't let them fail. So I don't know. Maybe in that article they've got kind of a questionnaire that they used or something. But
I actually pulled it up, but this is not. This article is not. Was not a study that they did. It's a summary. Basically, it's a quick
summarized a bunch of studies.
The
meta-analysis.
Thank you, but except they didn't do an analysis, so it's just a meta.
Is it like a literature review thing?
Yeah, it's essentially compiling all this stuff.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's in their commentary section, so it's saying, hey, look, this is what we're noticing from all this research we now have piling up over decades, this is what we're
Mhm.
seeing. So as I skimmed through it again, I was like, yeah, I'd have to probably skim longer and pay more attention than I want to right now to be able to pull out where they say this is what it means when we say helicopter, because they don't know. I'm trying to remember if they actually use the term in theirs or if they're just saying the decline in independent activity.
They don't use it.
How do you know? Did you do a quick
Because I
word search?
Google searched it, dude. Or I word searched it in the thing.
He controlled F'd it.
Yeah.
I did that.
I was just thinking, sometimes I get these tones from Mike. It's like, because I Google searched it, moron. It's like, oh, yeah, okay.
In my defense, I'm not sure I can defend myself here. I'm not calling you a moron, although apparently I am.
I like the way that's your defense. In my defense, I'm not doing that. Good defense.
Well, I'm not like I didn't hear it and think, man, Rob's a real moron. I can't believe he asked me that question. Like that wasn't my thought process.
Or was it?
But apparently
is
on some
interesting.
level, I thought, how is Rob asking me this question?
I wonder how far back this goes, because the hovering, right, which is kind of where the helicopter comes from.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was hovering around like their activities outside the home, but I remember when we, in my gender and ethnicity class in my master's program, we read a book that like described German mothers this way. And I've heard several people say that more like around the house, it's like they're constantly walking around, and like if you leave something behind, they pick it right up, and it's like everything's got to be in order type of a thing. So I guess that could apply to the being a maid in your own house. But
it's interesting. There are some things that, like when you said made in your own house, I thought, oh, I've definitely done that. It's not usually out of like, every once in a while I've done it. Well, periodically I'll do it because it's like, my kid feels like crap today. I'll just do the job that they're supposed to do because I'll give them a break. But there's times when I don't do that, where I think, no, look, sorry, we all have hard days and you still have to go do this crap.
mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's just a matter of like, I'm so sick of this and it's not worth the fight I have to put up to get you to do this. But I think more of the hovering, I think, is more of an element in my mind of like, how much am I protecting my kids from natural consequences? Like when I was teaching undergrad at Texas Tech, I had some experience with this class where one kid met with me before the final. He said, hey, I just want to figure out like, what would I have to get on the final to like get an A in the class? Which kind of, I think we even had a conversation. It's like, well, I mean, the rubrics are all right there and you have all the point breakdown right there. You just need to plug in like what you have. And he's like, could you show me that? And I'm like, okay. So I plug in this number. I was like, essentially you have to get a 99 to get an A. And he's like, okay. And then he left. And then I went in and, later after the finals over, didn't do very well. And I went in and punched in all the final grades. And he got like maybe like a low B in the class. And after I entered the final grades, I got an email from him saying, you changed my grade from an A to a B or whatever. And I said, so he called and I talked to him. He's like, you changed my grade. I looked at my grade and it was an A and now it's a B. Why is it a B? And I said, well, I entered your final. You got a 72 or whatever on the final. And so now your grade is a B. He's like, but it was an A. I already looked and saw it. And I said, I figured out, I was like, oh, I understand what happened is that when you sat here with me, I plugged in the numbers for you so you could see what it would be. And I said, apparently I didn't delete that out until I put in your actual score. And so this is your final score. And then at some point, he's like, my parents agree with me. You need to honor the original grade you put in there.
What?
And I was like,
the original grade without the assignment completed.
I was like, well, I don't really care if your parents agree with you. That was a hypothetical. You sat with me, but you actually got this score on the final. And I think his parents actually called me. I didn't respond to it because I was like, I don't need to talk to you.
Wait,
And you can't anyway.
What university
Legally.
were you at?
It was at Texas Tech,
Oh my
which
gosh.
It was hilarious. But I remember thinking, I cannot imagine going to my parents and saying, man, this and this happened. And I guess I got a low grade on the final, but he had this in there originally. And I can't imagine my parents saying, you're right, he should honor that. I feel like they'd be like, well, what'd you actually get on the final? Then that's what your grade is.
Yeah.
That's like, I can't imagine his parents calling. Like, I think even if I could get to a place where I could see our parents, Rob, saying like, well, yeah, he should have, like, there's no way my parents would. I mean, both educators, so it's not happening. But
they're not going to say, let me call them up for you.
Right. Like, sorry, dude, go solve this problem. Like,
but that's,
if you want it solved, you're an adult, go solve it.
That's and that's an extreme example. That's like, I think for any of us to be like, seriously, dudes in college, even people listening to be like, seriously, I would never do that. But then I wonder, well, how many things like that do we do at school for our kids? Like, and where it says like, you do their homework for them. I think, look, I've never done my homework for my kid, but in the process of explaining to him, this is how you do this equation, I've essentially done the whole thing. And then even said once before, just copy down what I wrote, dude. I'm sick of doing this right now. I made him explain it to me.
I think that's different, though.
Sure.
I don't think that. I mean, it is. I wouldn't put that. I wouldn't say that's helicoptering, though. I mean, that's you trying and then like finally caving at the end, which I think we're all guilty of. I think helicoptering is more like, I'm checking your grades, online and looking for zeros multiple times a day.
Yeah.
I'm,
I never
doing
look at
assignments because you don't have time, all that stuff.
I don't look at my kids' scores on Schoology or whatever it is they use. I don't look at their grades. I'll ask them like, well, do you need to work on something? Like, that's not my job. Yeah. And I let my kids, my daughter will be like, hey, I'm going to go for a drive. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, all right, well, drive safe. I don't actually think, and I don't think helicopter parenting or hovering parenting is a black or white on-off switch. I think there's elements of gray in there of like, I do some stuff where I over function for my kids. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just ease for me or sometimes it's for them, but whatever. Mike?
Well, I was going to say, I think intentionality, if we're going to like differentiate, I think intentionality has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Maybe. Keep going.
Well, it's thinking back to the school thing. Yeah, every parent has done the thing you described.
Right.
Because learning how to guide a person, like when you're teaching a concept that they're struggling with, learning how to guide them through it without giving the answers is a very difficult skill to learn. I think most people don't understand that, like, no, when I help a student, I don't at no point am I giving the kid any answer along the way. But it took me a lot of years teaching to develop that. Like at first, when I first started teaching, I was giving answers all over the place because I didn't know how else to help them. So I would show them how to do it. And then they would have the answer. And then they would be back 2 problems later because it was just different enough. They didn't know how to do it. And so I had to learn how to do this. So I think, no, every parent's done that. That's just, it's a skill that I think is harder to learn than people realize.
Yeah.
And so we've all done it. And everyone's done, like Matt said, the frustrated, just here's the answer. Just put the answer down. But like when I think about helicopter parents that I dealt with, like I would have parents that would email and be like, my child needs some extra credit. And this is when I was teaching 5th and 6th grade. Right. And I'm like, okay, well, then have your child come talk to me about it. Well, he says that, no, if he wants it, he can come talk to me about it. And it's that kind of thing. Or like I even, like in here, I remember working with a kid and kind of talking to him about stuff. And I said, so what are you going to do? And he says, I'll probably tell my parents and let them fight it. And I was just like, aren't you in like 8th grade now? Like, shouldn't you be doing that on your own?
Well, that's a good example. And I like one of the things I'm curious about with intentionality is I think, sure, sometimes the intention behind what we're doing makes a difference in this category, but also it may not. If it was just an ease of like, this makes it easier for me to just do this, my kid still ends up the same way. They don't know if they can do this stuff on their own because I always did it. And I do think, like I think about, there's lots of us that could find areas where it's like, I have done this or I have done that. Like that is not necessarily like you wouldn't call yourself a helicopter parent, but that's why I'm saying, but you have overfunctioned. And just because I want to use this term, this new term apparently that Matt was talking about, that was like, oh yeah, we looked it up to find out what the new term for helicopter parenting, which this is kind of indicative of the fact that it has increased in its intensity. Instead of being hovering to helicopter parenting, it's now often referred to as lawnmower parenting, which it says compared to the gardening tool because they cut down any obstacle that could stand in their child's way. So it's now like, I mean, essentially, if you think of a lawnmower, it's, it hovers so close that it will just chop all the stuff. Like the time I accidentally ran over a little family of small bunnies.
Oh,
They popped out of the thing, and I was like, I heard this, and I was like, what was that? And I looked, and I was like, oh, it was horrifying. Anyway, so here's what I like. This is the part that I like. I think matters more because I do think one of the reasons that they did this little summary is in the very beginning. They say, let's see, recognizing this, the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Children's Hospital Association issued in 2021 a joint statement to the Biden administration that child and adolescent mental health be declared a national emergency because clearly this is a problem. So the thing that I wonder about, like, as we're talking about this is, can I identify the ways that I'm overfunctioning and why? If it's an occasional, maybe this is kind of what you're getting at too, Mike. Maybe it's not intentionality, but it's like pattern. If I overfunction every now and then because it's like, ugh, dude. But if for 18 years I'm like, ugh, dude, and I just did it for them, then we end up with the same result. They just learn someone else will do this for me. I don't really have to worry about it. And I've seen this even at universities, actually. I guess I say the university level because that's where I taught, but it also surprised me, even at a master's level, the amount of people who felt like this should be taken care of for me. And I don't know how to do this, this, or this. And it felt like, well, you're 30. It's like not even like you're 20, you're an adult now. You got to figure out what this. It's like you've been adulting for 12 years. I hate that word, but you've been doing this for 12 years. Like you should have figured this out by now. So I think the thing I'm curious about is to say like, well, how do we, maybe you guys have some thoughts on this. I think and this is one of those no duh moments, but maybe clarify for those where it's not a no duh to say, hey, what does this do to kids? The lawnmower parenting.
well, apparently it kills bunnies, dude. I can't get the bunnies out of my head.
I can't get them head either.
I was thinking about this because if the problem that they are defining in that article is lack of unstructured free time, and that leads to, we've talked about before how that leads to kind of underdevelopment of your executive functioning skills and your social skills and all of these things. If that's the thing that is causing, I guess, closely linked to anxiety and mental health issues, then helicopter parenting is a part of that, or lawnmower parenting is a part of that. But I think it goes beyond parents. Like if we say parent broadly, meaning adults involved in your children's lives in meaningful ways, you could think about school, extracurricular stuff, church stuff, any other community that you're a part of. And what's kind of the collective feeling in those communities about what makes me a good parent.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we feel, I don't know that it was necessarily as different as I'm remembering it, but it seems like when I was a kid, if a teacher said I did something wrong, my parents were going to side with the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it was like really,
always.
Yeah. Like unless it was really, or an adult. Right. And maybe that was just their fear of looking bad with other adults.
Yeah.
But I think we kind of fall into the same trap where if I'm the person pushing my kid and letting them struggle, do I look like a negligent parent? Do I look like an uninvolved parent? Because the narrative right now is kind of like, suffering is bad and we should eliminate it. And, and probably, like you said, has been increasing over the last 5 to 6 decades in that direction. So I think it goes beyond, I think it's helpful to think beyond parenting, but if we're thinking specifically, what can I do as a parent, or what am I doing? Yeah, I think all the things that we're talking about, like just eliminating chances for struggle and discomfort. It's a weird, I think, kind of cocktail of mental and emotional issues that comes up. That book we talked about a while ago, The Coddling of the American Mind, talks about how you become obviously kind of weakened in your ability to cope with difficulties.
Right.
But that only happens, I think, when you live in a time and in a society where, by and large, like when you look at the data on safety and quality of life and things like that, like this is arguably like the best time in human history on
Right.
so many levels. And so it affords us the opportunity to actually talk about some of the things that we just would not be talking about if we were in war. Like I wouldn't be telling you at all how I feel. Right.
Right.
I'd be trying to
Right.
like dodge bullets, literally. So, well, and I think about that just right now with like Hamas and everything. Like those people aren't asking like, "Hey, do you feel like you get enough free time?" Right? And I'm not saying that's like we should live in a war zone so that,
Sure.
but I think it's just a factor of kind of, the time and place that we're living. We are going to be expressing more of the feelings of difficulty, and I think sometimes that gives the impression that things are harder, and so we go easier.
Yeah.
And it just creates this cycle where, the more we control environments to create safety, the more anxiety that produces, and the more anxiety that's there, the more control we exert, and it just keeps like cycling back on itself.
I think it's kind of interesting the way you're describing that, to think it's kind of like if I said, so what should parents do? Part of that answer could be, hey, create more unstructured free play time, right? Don't have your kids' life so scheduled down that they don't even have to think. They just function under whatever schedule. The hard part is there is a weird narrative that says if you don't have it structured, you're a neglectful parent. If you said to your kid, go outside and play, then, I mean, the go outside and play thing, I feel like people can get on board with. It's like, yeah, you need to get out there and get off of screens. But if it's like, go outside and play, I'm not watching. Just go like run around the block with your friends. It's like, and I don't know what you're doing. That sounds like you need to know what your kids are doing. Have you been tracking them? There's a Life 360 app that you can get that will help you know. And it's like, oh, okay, do I need to know all of that? Like, my daughter, I think I told you she was supposed to go to like a Joann's Fabric or Michael's or something, one of the two. And I'm looking at the map because she's been gone for a while. I was like, what the crap? So I look at the Find My, like my Life 360, and I was like, what? She's like on Mopac heading south. And I was like, where are you? Oh, you don't know what Mopac is. One of our freeways, Matt, heading south towards Austin, like downtown Austin. And I keep looking, and eventually she's in downtown Austin. I was like, she's driven past like 3 Joann's. So I eventually called her because she's 16. She's never actually driven in downtown Austin before. So I was like, hey, Whitney, where are you? She's like, man, I don't know. I touched the first Michael's or whatever that came up, and suddenly it's got me going to somewhere called, like, I'm on Cesar Chavez. I was like, yeah, you're right smack in the middle of downtown. Like, and I just said, okay, well, punch the thing back in your GPS and come home. Like, the nice thing is it's kind of funny because I am just saying, we'll figure it out. But because of GPS, it's like, it's all figured out for her. But I'm not going to be like, just stay where you are. I'll come pick you up. Or, like you can, it's like, well, just figure it out. But there's a balance of like, okay, well, how do I make sure I'm still involved in parenting my kid? And also I'm not being neglectful and just saying, I don't care, just get away from me. But I think sometimes that's the struggle we have of, maybe this is kind of what you're getting at, Matt, like the balance of like, what's a good parent going to do? And good parents are involved. And so, I yell at my kids' coaches because I want to be an involved dad and or mom. And, it's like, maybe just back off and watch your kid have to struggle with his coach and say, if your kid came home and said, I'm not getting any playing time, to be like, well, you should probably go talk to your coach about that. You don't call the coach for him and say, hey, why isn't my son getting any playing time?
Yeah.
Your kid should go, hey, coach, how do I get more playing time? The coach would say, you got a weak throwing arm, man. Let's build that up or whatever. Like, but I think you have to become okay with the idea. And maybe even this is where your intentional piece comes in, Mike. Like, I'm intentionally saying, go do something that I don't want to know what you're doing. Like, obviously at the appropriate age, you're not going to say that to a 5-year-old, like go off into the woods and don't tell me what's happening. But like when my kid's 15, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, man, just go do something. Go get in trouble in some way and don't let me know what it is. Like you should probably, I think I want my kids to fail in some way. You kind of have to want that, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that means your kid's trying things and it blew up in their face. Because otherwise I think your college essay is gonna be really boring. That's the point.
Mike.
So yeah, Mike.
Well, no, like the letting them fail thing, like when you said, yes, I think that's true. Like, it's why I wouldn't, when my son was a Cub Scout, it's why I wouldn't go on. They would do 3 camp outs a year, and they would ask me every time, and I was like, no, I'm not going. And finally, my friend who was the Cub Master asked, well, why aren't you going? I said, because he's 10 and he needs to do dumb things. And if I'm there, he won't do dumb things because he's going to want to make sure that he's, and as a parent, I'm going to feel the need to say, no, don't throw that cigarette lighter in the fire. That's dumb. Right. But at his age, what did I do? I threw the cigarette lighter in the fire. I wanted to see that thing explode.
And was way underwhelmed by the explosion that
I know.
followed.
That's what it is.
Everyone's like, no, dude, it might hit you. No, it won't. And like, but there is a difference between allowing them to find situations or create situations where they fail and setting them up to fail.
Oh yeah.
Like your kids don't need you to create the situation where they fail so they can get a taste of failure. They'll do that all by themselves.
If you let them.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. But again, you do have to let them. And that's sometimes as my wife and I have talked over the last, years and months about kids and parenting, and the one thing that we've come back to time and again is sometimes the right thing to do as a parent is nothing. And that's a very hard place to sit because as parents, we've been through most of what our kids are going through. Despite what they think, we've been through most of the stuff they're dealing with. Now, is it the same? Obviously not. Technology, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But no, we've been through this stuff. And so we can see things coming and we can think, yeah, I know how that's going to end. It's going to be ugly. But this is one of those moments I need to just let my kid figure out, hey, sorry, man, you didn't turn in 7 assignments. It looks like you are on suspension from the school team because no pass, no play. And like, I'm just going to sit here and be comfortable with you being in that position.
I think that part, this be comfortable part, is actually really difficult because it's like for a lot of parents, it's like I'm going to be comfortable with the fact that you'll get kicked off the football team, but you wanted to play in college and I wanted you to have the scholarship, or I want, it's like the comfort is your kid could blow his life up, and your job is to be like, hopefully they'll come and talk to you and say, I think I want to quit, and you'll say, well, let's talk about why you want to quit. You won't just say, no, you need to keep doing this. You'll say, well, you're gonna have to figure this out on your own, or you're gonna have to figure this out, but I can talk you through this, but you have to make the decision on your own. I think it's just a hard thing. Like I think for anyone listening that can identify and say, oh, if they're being honest, I think a lot of us could identify at least a few ways, if not multiple, or many, I should say, because technically few is multiple, but at least a few ways where we could say, I hover here, or I overfunction here, or I've mowed the lawn for my kid here. And it may or may not be a bigger pattern, but you do have to understand why you're doing it so that you can stop doing it. Like if I do this because I worry this, which is usually the number one thing for hovering parenting or helicopter parenting is my worry. So you'd have to know, okay, well, how do I tolerate that worry then? Because it's not going to go, it's going to escalate if I watch my kid walk off and do this thing that's really stupid that I would stop them from, or they didn't check their grades. And so now they're failing a class. And so I should start checking for them. No, I think that's where a lot of parents can get caught is like, yeah, I check their stuff because dude, I do not like that if my kid misses school, I'm alerted on my phone within like 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it feels like just let my kid skip school and like try to get away with it. This sucks. Why do I have to know every single second my kid peed during class?
Yeah. Like give me I remember, and it was kind of the unspoken rule among us as siblings, right? If the phone call came in at the end of the day from the high school saying someone has been
Intercepted.
absent. Yeah, like if one of the kids got it, no one said anything.
Yeah.
Like we never ratted each other out with that kind of stuff.
That was the best when it had to leave a message on your answer machine so you could get home
Right.
before your parents and quickly delete it.
Yep.
Man.
And that's like there is that aspect of like now, you know, I get an email, I get texts, I get phone calls. I'm like, it drives me nuts. Because my kids, like, yeah, like you said, I'm going to know pretty much the minute, and there's no way they're getting away with it.
Right.
I would have to like turn off everything. But it is that hard. Like it's figuring out the balance of when do I let my kid do this? I was talking to a kid who, safe to say, he probably feels like he has helicopter parents. And they're not actually super interested in, like, I wouldn't call them lawnmower parents. They're not trying to like get every difficult thing out of his way, but they are much more directive than he wants them to be. Right. And that's where like the helicopter, I think, oh yeah, they're hovering from above and kind of saying, no, you need to go over here now. And he just wants to kind of go. And I said, well, but you know, like just my parents need to just let me fail. And I said, well, right. But as a parent, don't they have a responsibility to, like, there are
Guide, at
certain
least.
things they shouldn't allow to have happen. Right. Like, no, I shouldn't be okay with my kid drinking and driving.
Right.
Like, you know, you just shouldn't be okay with it. And so it's one of those where you do have to kind of gauge, okay, well, what things do we let just slide? What things do I sit back and watch my kid fail at? And which things do I say, sorry, I got to intervene here? And you'll be wrong, probably as often as you're right, because there's no clear cut, right? It's like you going back to the idea. It's more gray than we think it is. Helicopter parenting is not a black and white thing. It's a gray thing.
Right.
Which means trying to gauge when, no, there's not going to be, you can't set these clear cut. Well, I will intervene in these instances.
Well, and this is what I think is interesting, just to go back really quick, because we keep using the term helicopter parenting, which I think a lot of people would be like, no, but I think if some of this is set up from the very beginning. It's like parents who really overschedule their kids. That's this decline in independent activity means they're not doing things for themselves anymore, and having to figure out, what do I do when I'm bored? Because so many parents are saying, well, when you're bored, you're just going to do bad things. You're going to get in trouble, or you're going to look at screens, or you're going to, and so we overstructure our kids, which is his own kind of like overparenting, or whatever you want to call it. None of it's not bad, but it is like, if you look at this, again, my head says, right, the kid never learns like their own potential. They don't learn like, how do I manage myself, or how do I function when I'm in a bad spot? How do I get out of it? So they don't know I can adapt to challenges as they come. So it creates a space where your kid ends up feeling like, I'm afraid of life, because life more and more looks like challenges everywhere, but I have no clue how to handle them. So then they can't function, then they get depressed, they get anxious, they get all the other things because they don't know what to do. So you've kind of, yes, you gave your kid lots of structure and they've achieved lots of things, maybe in grades or scholarships or sports, but they don't know how to adapt when, like, they lose a job, or actually even just relationally, like something comes up and it's like, well, I don't know how to say to you, I don't like the way this feels, because it was always pre-anticipated for me that I wouldn't like how it felt. And so this thing happened, or I had no say in it. So I don't know even how to speak up for myself, because that wasn't something I ever had to do. Somebody always pre-anticipated. Can you pre-anticipate? Double anticipation?
When
They
you're
anticipated.
helicoptering, you can.
Yeah, that's true. They anticipated my every need. And so I don't have to pay attention to it. And so even just relationally, it kind of screws people over when they become adults, because I haven't had to look at this. And I don't know how to adapt if it's not functioning the way it's supposed to, because I've never had to push through the discomfort of this. It's you could even find, like, you know, people who ghost in relationships. It's like, well, I don't know how to deal with this. I just won't. I'll just Homer Simpson it into the bushes and fade. Nah.
I do think there's, the idea of overscheduling our kids. Like, yeah, they don't learn how to kind of function for themselves when they have those downtimes, but I think those downtimes can also create anxiety in the kid. Like, I remember when I
If they're
first,
overscheduled
yeah,
or just, yeah.
when I first finished my degree, and went back to a normal schedule, I had so much free time, I didn't know what to do. And so the first few weeks, I would sit there and I would just kind of panic that I was not doing something I was supposed to be doing.
And now I just nap.
And now I just take naps. But this anxiety was like in me of like, crap, I'm missing something. Something's going to go wrong and it's going to be bad.
Right.
And I think, yeah, your kid's going to experience a similar sensation. Like there's one night where it's like, oh, no one's telling me, like, I don't know what to do. And I'm probably supposed to be doing something because I'm always doing something.
It's interesting too. One more thing that I think I've thought before, like, why do my kids always, I like my kids a lot. They're freaking awesome. But part of me is like, why do my kids always want to hang out with me? I never wanted to hang out with my parents. And it's not even a bad thing. I can't complain about that. Except I think you guys should probably have some time where you're just doing stuff on it. Like it's enough that sometimes when they talk, I'm like, guys, don't say that in front of your parent. Like, I understand you're going to say that stuff to each other, but don't say that in front of me. Like, like I want you to have a good relationship with me, but come on, save some stuff for like, hey, this is stuff we do when mom and dad aren't looking. Mm-hmm. Like I do think it's like I think parents would have to say, I'm going to take away some of the structure and tell the kid, like, what do I have going on Saturday? I don't know, man. You got a wide open day. So whatever you're going to do. And it's like, well, do you want to do this and this? And sometimes the answer should be, no, go like call your buddies and go hang out instead of, and so that's the part that's, I feel like you have to find the balance of like, you can sound like a neglectful parent, but if you're trying to say, no, man, you need to have structured or unstructured time, you and your friends where I'm not there. Like what you're saying, Mike, with camping, I've thought the same thing. If I'm with my boys when they're camping with their buddies and they want to pee on the fire, is someone be like, no, you can't pee on the fire? I'd be like, I'm not going to say that because I want my boys to pee on the fire. It's a rite of passage. But like, I don't know. I just think, I think there's subtle ways that we can find that maybe we are doing more than we should as parents, and we need to let our kids fall on their faces and help them talk about how bad it sucks when they fall, so that we stop. Like, if this is just continuing so much that we've gotten down to lawnmower level, somewhere we have to decide, all right, I'm going to back off a little bit and let my kid do things that people would say, Matt, I remember you telling me this about your, with your girls, one of your girls watching him learn to ride a bike or something. Mm-hmm. And you were just sitting there watching, and people probably thought, freaking jerk dad's not even helping his kid. But you're like, she needs to get this. Like, she wants to get this for herself. But you just look like a jerk and being like, get back on there. You know? But I think that's really valuable because your kid learns like, oh, I can trust my own capacity to figure something out. Mm-hmm. Amen. That's all I have to say about that. Any other final thoughts, boys? I mean, men. Any thoughts on the Roman Empire?
No. The epidemic statement.
Yeah.
I think that's a really well-intentioned thing, but I worry what that communicates. Not so much what it communicates, but what people would do with that. Like if you're labeling anxiety, or they said mental health, but let's just say anxiety as an epidemic, then do we do everything we can to eliminate anxiety? Because that only increases it, right?
Right.
So I wish it was like our overly scheduled, achievement-oriented and hovering society is an epidemic.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. That's a much better way to put it, because I think we've talked about this in previous episodes, and we could do more on it, because I think I felt like, oddly enough, being a mental health professional, I feel like we've tipped a little too far into prioritizing mental health over everything. Mm-hmm. So that it's so focused on that it's like, well, I feel this thing, and what is that? And kind of what you're saying earlier, Matt, we should remove all suffering from life, which essentially means we should make everyone feel numb. And then we create, like, I remember giving like a presentation to teenagers about, how do I know if I'm depressed or anxious? And I remember thinking like, well, just talk to somebody. If you feel like, hey, this stuff's going on for me, what is this? And you'd be like, oh, well, let's talk it out. And I said, maybe you're anxious, maybe you're not. I don't know. Who cares? Go talk to somebody. If you feel like there's something going on in my head, I want to talk to somebody, then go talk to somebody. But don't start like thinking, well, I have to have this labeled and picked, and because then it's like we need to get rid of anxiety altogether. That'll never happen, and it's actually a necessary element of life, or at least the fear that comes, the pattern of like I'm stuck in this spiraling space. That's different, but anyway, sorry I cut you off because I'm just full of myself today. Woo!
That's it.
Well, I don't know if I have a parting shot, but then catch us next time on the Man Space. Parting shot. I got nothing. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please remember to
Rate
and
review.
please, we desperately need it.